Welcome back, everybody. Today's deep dive is all about motivation.
Mm,
Um, we've got a pretty interesting mix of sources, from self-help websites and psychology articles to, tips for building better habits. So
mm.
it'll be super interesting to see how these all connect.
Yeah, for sure.
Have you been feeling kind of stuck lately?
Hmm.
Or maybe you're just looking for new ways to, reach those big goals.
Right.
Either way, this deep dive is for you.
Absolutely. It's fascinating how much the topic of habits pops up in these sources. Like when we talk about motivation, it seems no matter where you look, the advice always boils down to making small, consistent changes.
That's true. The IQ Matrix blog even had this quote. Um, a slight change in your daily habits can guide your life to a different destination. It really makes you think, right?
Yeah, totally. Like just tweaking little things day by day can actually lead to huge changes down the line.
Exactly.
And what I think is really cool is that this isn't just some vague idea, it's actually being put into practice.
Oh, yeah.
Like Lifehack, for example, they offer AI-powered coaching that helps you implement those tiny daily actions to achieve your goals. And they actually acknowledge that, we're all super busy, so they focus on making those changes doable even on those crazy hectic days.
That's awesome, because who really has the time for like a complete life overhaul?
Right, exactly.
And speaking of time, Lifehack also mentioned how the quality of time really impacts the quality of your life. Like when you think about it, it's a bit of a wake-up call
Yeah.
to think about how we're actually spending all those precious hours.
It really encourages you to be more mindful, not just going through the motions, but asking yourself, is this how I really want to be using my time?
Mhm.
It's all about being intentional and making sure your actions are actually lining up with what's important to you.
I love that.
Hmm.
Okay, so those daily habits, they're kind of like the building blocks, but we need a clear destination, right?
Right.
That's where setting goals comes in. And it seems like everyone has a different approach.
Yeah, definitely. Lifehack has this really interesting thing called a 360 assessment. Helps you figure out what your most important goals and needs actually are. So instead of just picking generic goals, it actually personalizes the whole process.
I like that. So it's like having a personal goal coach in your pocket.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like having a tailored suit, the perfect fit gives you the best results.
Hmm.
But we also came across some broader advice from Motivation Matter.
Okay, like what?
Stuff like learning from mentors. They even have suggestions for some motivational TED Talks and how to handle tricky relationships, the kind that might be holding you back.
It's a good reminder that motivation isn't just about individual effort.
Right.
It's also about the people you surround yourself with and learning from their experiences.
Totally. And speaking of tools, Lifehack also has this cool smarter goal generator.
Right.
It like walks you through the whole process of creating actually achievable goals. If anyone's feeling inspired and wants to get organized with their aspirations, you should definitely check that out after our deep dive.
I'll have to do that.
But even with the best tools and strategies, there's still this internal factor that can make or break your success.
You're talking about mindset.
Exactly, mindset. And Psychology Today had this really interesting concept called ambivalence. They ask, have you ever felt kind of torn, like between wanting to change and at the same time liking things the way they are? It's like this inner battle between comfort and growth.
Oh, totally. Like being comfortable where you are, but knowing you should push yourself more.
Yeah, it's super relatable, right? And they suggest a lot of this internal struggle comes down to self-esteem. This is where the IQ Matrix blog comes in with their 7-step self-esteem builder. It's based on NLP, neuro-linguistic programming.
Oh,
Basically, it's a way to change your thought patterns and behaviors to make them more positive, like a mental makeover.
I like that. It makes you wonder, though, is external motivation, like getting praise or rewards, better than the motivation that comes from within? We're seeing both sides in these sources. Like Lifehack focuses on helping you find that internal drive, while Motivation Matter seems to use more external factors to get things moving.
Yeah, it is interesting how Lifehack really leans into that intrinsic motivation. But I've found that sometimes a little external push can be helpful to just get started. What do you think?
Well, Motivation Matter also had articles on like encouraging words for students and boosting employee engagement. That's all about external motivation, right? So maybe it's a combination of both. Like you need that spark from somewhere, but then it's the internal drive that takes over and keeps you going.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that actually leads perfectly into our next topic. Because whether it's motivation in school, at work, or just in your personal life, you can't ignore the impact of relationships.
True. And this is where things get a bit more complex. Like Psychology Today has this article called Why You Keep Going Back to Your Ex. It goes into relationship patterns and how they affect our personal goals. It's definitely a bit heavier than some of the other sources, but it's super insightful.
Yeah, it
And
is.
then you've got Motivation Matter with their 60 romantic pickup lines to score a date. It's like two completely different approaches to relationships.
Right. I mean, it just goes to show how many different ways there are to approach relationships. And the crazy thing is, they can really influence whether you feel motivated to pursue your goals or not.
That's true.
And Lifehack really stresses the importance of work-life harmony, reminding us that relationships are a big part of our overall success and well-being. It's about finding that balance.
Like you can't be truly successful in one part of your life if other parts are a complete mess. It all works together, right?
Exactly. And a big part of finding that balance and achieving success comes down to self-reflection. Like being able to step back and see the big picture is crucial.
And there are actually some cool tools out there to help us do that.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, WikiHow has this fun quiz. Take the quiz. How can I become happier? I'm going to check that out later.
Sounds fun.
And then there's Psychology Today with an article on finding power as a long view, which encourages thinking about your challenges and progress, from a wider perspective.
So it's like understanding that setbacks are just part of the process and that real growth takes time. It's not getting caught up in every little obstacle, but looking at the overall direction you're heading in.
I love that. And Lifehack even offers AI-assisted journaling.
Oh, wow.
It's like having a digital therapist helping you unpack your thoughts, feelings, and actions.
It really highlights how important self-awareness is, right? If you don't even understand why you do the things you do, how can you change them?
That's so true.
Wow, it's been quite a journey through these sources already, hasn't it?
It really has, and we've only just scratched the surface. I can't wait to see what other insights we find as we keep going with this deep dive.
Me too. While we're talking about self-awareness and growth, there's this one source that takes a really interesting angle on motivation.
Oh, really? Which one?
Motivation Matter. They've got this article about how practicing gratitude, like really being thankful in a religious context, can boost your drive.
Hmm. That's an interesting perspective. I hadn't really thought about it like that before.
Yeah, it makes sense though, right? If you're feeling thankful for what you have, it sets a more positive and motivated tone. Like gratitude becomes a type of fuel.
Yeah, I could see that.
And, it connects to something we see a lot across these different sources. The whole idea of meaning and purpose, like whether it's faith, relationships, or personal goals, having that strong sense of why can be super motivating.
That's true.
But Motivation Matter also talks about the less positive side of relationships,
Oh, right. Yeah.
how to overcome codependency. This one really stood out to me because it shows how sometimes our connections can actually hold us back from reaching our full potential.
That's an important point.
It's about recognizing those unhealthy patterns where you might lose yourself in someone else's needs and end up neglecting your own growth.
Codependency can be sneaky too, right? It can manifest in so many ways.
Totally. But I think the root of it often comes down to a lack of boundaries.
Yeah. And that can really kill motivation.
For sure. If you're constantly putting everyone else first, it's almost impossible to find the energy to go after your own goals.
True.
It's like trying to run a race with a weight chain to your ankle. But Motivation Matter does offer some steps to break free from those patterns.
Like what?
Things like learning to say no more often and prioritizing self-care, realizing that your needs are just as important as anyone else's.
That self-respect can be a powerful motivator.
Yeah, definitely.
And it seems like having support from others is crucial too.
For sure, we're not meant to go through this journey alone. Having people who believe in you, offer advice, pick you up when you fall, that can make all the difference.
Speaking of, Motivation Matter had that article about encouraging words for students, but I think the message goes way beyond just students. It's a good reminder that everyone needs someone in their corner, someone to cheer them on.
Absolutely. We all need a cheerleader in our lives. And they also recommended some inspiring TED Talks about mentorship.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
It's like you're tapping into this well of wisdom and knowledge. And with TED Talks, you get so many different perspectives.
It's true. Everything from personal stories to business advice to social change. There's literally something for everyone. But, you don't always have to look to, like, big names and experts for inspiration.
That's true.
Sometimes the most powerful lessons come from the people we interact with every day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everyone has a story, and those stories often hold valuable lessons that we can apply to our own lives. Whether it's a friend who overcame a challenge, a colleague who achieved a big goal, a family member with a super positive outlook, those everyday interactions can be just as motivating as any fancy TED Talk.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And it's not just our personal lives that benefit from all this motivation stuff. Motivation Matter even gets into how motivation can affect employee engagement, which is super important for anyone in a leadership role.
That's an interesting point.
It's like shifting the focus from just personal motivation to its impact on a larger scale.
Right.
Like, engaged employees are more productive, more creative, more committed to their work. It's about creating a positive work environment where people feel valued and motivated to contribute their best.
So basically everyone wins in that scenario,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Happy employees, more successful company.
Exactly. And they suggest some ways to build that engagement.
Like what?
Stuff like offering opportunities for growth and development, recognizing people's achievements, encouraging open communication. It's all about showing your team that you value their contributions and you want to help them succeed.
It's awesome when everyone's on the same page like that.
For sure. So whether it's at work, in school, or just in your own life, it seems like that little spark of motivation can really make a difference.
It really can. But remember, motivation doesn't always have to be super serious.
Oh, that's true.
It can be playful too.
Oh, yeah. Like, Motivation Matter actually surprised me with that article, 60 Romantic Pickup Lines to Score a Date.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Some of those were pretty cheesy.
Yeah, but even if they're a bit cheesy, putting yourself out there like that, even if it feels a little awkward, it takes confidence.
Definitely. You got to be willing to be vulnerable, maybe even a little silly.
And sometimes that vulnerability can lead to some amazing connections.
So true. You know, that actually reminds me of another article from Motivation Matter, the one about getting motivated to do homework. It's geared towards students,
Huh.
but I think the tips apply to anyone who's struggling to start something they're not thrilled about.
Oh, yeah. What did they say?
They talk about breaking down big tasks into smaller chunks, setting up a reward system, finding an accountability buddy. These are all strategies that can be used in any area where we need a little extra push.
Yeah. It's all about taking those daunting tasks and making them feel more manageable, maybe even a bit fun. But even with the best strategies, sometimes you just got to push through, even if it feels like pulling teeth.
And that's where discipline comes in. Motivation might come and go, but your commitment to your goals should be solid.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's about recognizing that some days will be tougher than others, but the long-term reward is worth the effort.
Totally.
And speaking of effort, Lifehack has a really helpful article about building new habits faster by using checklists.
Oh, I love a good checklist.
Me too. It's such a simple but effective tool for staying organized and on track.
And for building habits, it creates structure and accountability. They suggest using them to break new habits down into smaller, more doable steps.
So, like, if you're trying to start working out in the morning, your checklist might include things like laying out your clothes the night before, setting your alarm earlier, or having a pre-workout snack ready.
It's like setting yourself up for success, right? Every item you check off is a small victory that reinforces the new habit,
Exactly.
and it helps you build momentum.
And those small wins, they add up to big changes over time. Whether it's exercising, learning something new, or simply being more mindful, those little steps can lead to huge results.
I really can.
Speaking of results, it makes me wonder, how do we actually define success? Is it all about external things like money and recognition? Or is it something deeper, something more personal?
That's a great question. There's no single right answer. For some people, success might mean climbing the career ladder or achieving financial security. For others, it might be pursuing their passions, making a difference in the world, or simply living a life that aligns with their values. It's really up to each person to define what success means to them.
That's true. And what we consider success might change over time, too, right?
Yeah, definitely.
As our priorities and values evolve, I mean, life is all about growth and change, so it makes sense that our definition of success would also change.
It's like life is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, I love that.
And the same goes for success.
And speaking of journeys, let's talk about the role of technology. You know, in this whole quest for motivation and success, we've already mentioned Lifehack's AI-powered coaching and journaling, but there's a whole world of apps and tools designed to help us reach our goals.
It's like having a whole team of virtual assistants.
Yeah. Habit trackers, goal-setting apps, mindfulness tools, online learning platforms. There's something for every aspect of personal growth.
It's amazing, really. We have access to more information, resources, and support than ever before. The key is to use these tools wisely.
I agree. Technology can be incredibly helpful, but it can also be a major distraction if we're not careful. It's all about finding that balance.
Using tech to enhance our lives without letting it completely take over. Because at the end of the day, the real magic happens offline, in the real world, where we connect with people, take action, and make those dreams a reality.
That's true, but there's one aspect of the motivation conversation that I think often gets overlooked.
What's that?
Failure.
Oh,
It's not something people like to talk about,
no, not really.
but it's an inevitable part of the journey, and I think how we handle failure is just as important as how we celebrate our successes.
You're right.
Failure can be a super valuable teacher if we're open to learning from it.
Like what kinds of things?
It helps us figure out our weaknesses, adjust our strategies, and become more resilient.
So it's about reframing failure, not as a defeat, but as an opportunity for growth.
Exactly. And remember, every successful person has faced setbacks. It's often those setbacks that shape our character and push us towards even bigger successes.
I like that. Failure is not the opposite of success, it's a part of success.
Well said. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave everyone with a few key takeaways. We've explored a ton of information, from the power of habits to the importance of goal setting, relationships, and self-reflection. But at the end of the day, the journey of motivation and success is a deeply personal one.
Absolutely. And there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's okay. The key is to figure out what works for you, experiment with different strategies, and be patient.
It's about finding what truly inspires you, what keeps you moving forward, even when things get tough. And remember, motivation isn't always a constant high. Some days you'll feel unstoppable, other days you'll be dragging your feet. The key is to just keep showing up, keep taking action, and keep believing in yourself.
That's beautifully said. As we head into the final part of this episode, I want to emphasize that we all have incredible power to create the lives we want. It starts with that spark of motivation, that belief in ourselves, and the willingness to put in the effort. It might not always be easy, but I promise you, it will be worth it.
I couldn't agree more. As we're talking about this power we have to create change, it's important to remember that success doesn't always have to be this huge, life-altering thing.
That's so true.
Sometimes it's those smaller, everyday wins that matter most.
Yeah, I think we can get so caught up in those big milestones, that we forget to appreciate all the little victories along the way. Sometimes success is simply getting out of bed when you're having a rough day, or finally tackling that task you've been putting off, or just taking that first tiny step towards a bigger goal.
It's about progress, not perfection, right?
Exactly. And that actually connects with something we've seen in a lot of these sources. Self-compassion. It's not just about pushing yourself to achieve, it's also about being kind to yourself throughout the process.
That makes sense.
We live in a culture that's all about hustle and constantly striving for more. But if you're always pushing without any breaks or self-care, you're just setting yourself up for burnout, not lasting success.
That's a good point. And speaking of self-care, the IQ Matrix blog has this great article about building self-esteem using NLP techniques.
Now, I know NLP might sound a bit intimidating or even gimmicky to some people,
Yeah, it can be a little out there.
but it's really about understanding how our thoughts, language, and behaviors all connect and influence each other. It's like rewiring those negative thought patterns that hold us back and replacing them with more positive, empowering beliefs.
It's like a mental makeover.
Exactly. And it made me think back to those cheesy pickup lines from Motivation Matter.
Oh, those pickup lines.
I mean, some of them were pretty bad, but putting yourself out there like that, even if it feels awkward, takes a certain level of confidence and self-assurance.
That's true. It's about being willing to be vulnerable, take a risk.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe it leads to something amazing, maybe it doesn't. But either way, you've pushed yourself outside your comfort zone, and that's always a good thing.
For sure. And speaking of relationships and vulnerability, Psychology Today has that article, Why You Keep Going Back to Your Ex. It's all about understanding those patterns in our relationships that can sometimes keep us from finding true happiness.
It's a bit heavier than some of the other topics we've covered, but it's super insightful.
Yeah, it is.
We all have baggage. We all have those patterns we fall into. But recognizing them is the first step to breaking free and building healthier, more fulfilling relationships.
Couldn't agree more. And this brings us back to self-reflection, something we've talked about a lot during this deep dive. We discussed tools like the AI-assisted journaling from Lifehack, but sometimes all it takes is a few quiet moments to really check in with yourself.
It's about asking yourself those tough questions. What's working? What's not? What needs to change?
Those are powerful questions, but they're just the beginning. The real work is taking action based on what you learn. It's not enough to just have the knowledge. You have to actually use it.
And that's where motivation comes in.
Yeah.
It's the fuel that keeps us going, the energy that helps us overcome obstacles, the willpower that keeps us from giving up.
Exactly. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of motivation and success, I want you to consider everything we've talked about and ask yourself, what's one small step you can take today to move closer to the life you want?
It could be something as simple as writing down your goals, reaching out to a mentor, or trying out a new habit for just 5 minutes. Even the smallest actions can create a ripple effect.
They really can.
They can lead to some pretty amazing outcomes.
This has been a fantastic exploration, and I hope everyone listening feels empowered to take that next step.
I agree. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We can't wait to explore more fascinating topics with you all soon.